Okay, I'm ready to call the meeting to order. If everyone's ready, please do so. Ready to go? All right, call the meeting to order. Kelly, can you do roll call for us, please?
We have Chairman Tracy Quick.
Here.
We have Commissioner Art Warren.
Here.
Commissioner Justin Acevedo.
You're on mute.
This is your Justin.
Justin, we're taking roll call. Can you announce that you're present?
And he is no longer.
Oh, you might have a connectivity issue there.
Yeah, probably just fine.
Sorry, y'all had some technical difficulties there. I'm back on.
Cool.
Justin, so you're present via Zoom.
Justin is present.
Thank you. And we have excused Commissioner Debbie Cox and Vice Chair Mary Lyle excused also. But we do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. All right, our first item of business is the acceptance of the resignation of Cecil Hernandez and Dylan Mojica, creating vacancies on the Planning and Zoning Commission. So I think we're going to discuss that. Yes, for the record. So I need a motion in a second, if I could, please.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second that motion.
So I got a motion in a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All in favor, nay. Nays have it. Ayes have it. All right. B is public hearing and consideration of UP-24-03, a request for conditional use permit to allow outdoor rental of utility terrain vehicles, UTVs, as an accessory commercial use on lots in the C3 Central Commercial Zoning District with a historic preservation overlay for the property located at 461 through 465 North Broad Street, assessor parcel number 208-03-008 and 009. Dana?
Excellent. Thank you so much, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Appreciate your convening this evening to hear these agenda items. This request, as you mentioned, was a conditional use permit. The zoning ordinance requires, in the C2 zoning district, requires any automotive sales or leasing, and then that's extended to equipment and all kinds of other potential sales and leasing of vehicles, if you will, by a conditional use permit. The C3 district, which this property is zoned, does not speak to automobile rentals or sales or anything. So by virtue of what I think identify as a commensurate use in a more intense zoning district, C3 is a more intense zoning district, or allows more intensive types of commercial uses than a C2. We just say, hey, if it's allowed in the C2, it's allowed in the C3 with the same provisions or so forth, which happens to include a conditional use permit. So I hope all that isn't too convoluted for you, but that's how we get here. That said, this is a UTV rental request, and we also obviously look at that as an automobile. They're licensed and or through the state to drive on our, be operated on our public rights of way and so forth. So that would qualify. If you see on the screen, the red area in this pilot parcel is one of the two parcels that the applicant owns. I believe the applicant should be in the audience.
Yes.
And then the other parcel is right here, immediately adjacent, immediately adjacent to that property. I'm going to zoom for you. Oh boy. Oh boy. So, that said, the brown you see in the beyond here is R2 residential. It's up that slope behind this property. And then this heavy outline that happens to be the historic district overlay. So this property is zoned C3 as well as has a historic district overlay location. I'll go ahead and pull up the site plan, the non-zoning appearing aerial for you. these two parcels right here. Sorry. So staff prepared a staff report for you. Hopefully you've got the opportunity to take a look. There's that property again. The applicant has access to the rear of the property through from the right-of-way to right here on the north side of the building. And they have that gated as well for security purposes. Adjacent use clearly is some sort of, is the automotive repair as well. So it's somewhat similar in its activity, in the activities on these two blocks or these two parcels. Here is the site plan submitted by the applicant, and again, he intends to or might be displaying UTVs right along the side of the building. Right beyond that location here to the northeast is the gated section. There's a pylon here for the gate and a pylon here, and that closes and locks. So storing those or locating those vehicles for display during business hours would not really obstruct any activity getting in and out as it's currently developed, as the site is currently developed. I think that's about a 16-foot gate, 15 or 16 or maybe even 17-foot gate here with the UTVs parked here. And then he stores those UTVs back in this one of the buildings on the adjacent lot that he owns as well. So with that, staff is recommending approval. And before I get to that, I'll just also advise we did receive one notice or response to our public notices. This is a use permit. We do advertise on the property as well as to all property surrounding within 300 feet. And this individual happens to be about 500 feet away, but they apparently probably own a parcel or something like that closer to receive this notice that was sent out. And she basically asked that as long as there's no additional noise from the shop and the ATVs, she's good with it. And she likes the idea. But she does have concern if there is noise, loud, revving of loud UTVs, stereos, and or driving back in that neighborhood. She recognized this could be a nuisance to the surrounding area. So with that being said, I did have a conversation with her. She was supportive with exactly these terms that she's outlined here. That said, the staff is recommending Planning and Zoning Commission approve the CUP request with 3 conditions. Outdoor automotive rental activity shall comply with the City of Globe noise and nuisance stand ordinances, and there's no excessive engine revving or audible stereo noise within city limits. That's just to reinforce what we would be primarily concerned with, aside from just general noise out of compliance with our noise trespass and our city ordinances. Secondly, that the operator manager of the property or the owner shall provide documented notice to customers of locations in which to operate the UTVs. We want to make sure that any Joe Schmo that might show up from places unknown, that's not familiar with Globe, doesn't think that running through the neighborhoods is a great idea. So not that, we plan for the margins, right? Most people generally have a understanding and respect for their neighbors, but planning and land use separation, things like that are in situations, conditional use permits are designed to say, hey, this is a different kind of animal that might require some exceptional conditions placed upon it, and that being one of the conditions I would see would be appropriate. So if there's an excessive identifiable situation where those rental vehicles are in areas that they shouldn't be, or becoming a nuisance to neighbors and things like that, we'll definitely have to document that, and that would be, given this is approved with these conditions, a reason to bring up compliance with the owner. And then thirdly, operator manager shall require customer automobile parking on site as to not occupy available on-street or other parking spaces during the duration of their rental. And the rationale for that, I've rented utility vehicles before, not necessarily in an urban downtown scenario as it is here. However, obviously you're leaving your car for an extended period potentially. Sometimes a half day or a full day or that type of rental in that condition. Obviously, we don't want to take up patron parking spaces for other businesses that share our on-street parking, our public parking spaces. So we want to ensure that those vehicles can be contained off-site or on-site and off of the right-of-way in those public spaces to make those available for people that want to shop and spend time in the downtown, not renting those UTVs. So those are the 3 conditions of approval. Staff is recommending, again, approval, and we have processed this through all of our department reviews, including PD. And there, I believe, may have a representative in the audience in case you have questions with regards to traffic violations and so forth. So with that, I'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Madam Chairman, my only question is, and I'm sure this is being considered, that we have adequate stop signage exiting the property because we have a sidewalk on a busy street, that would have good signs and possibly crosswalk code or something that protects that sidewalk on the street.
I'll let the applicant respond with their response, but I feel that's a good point that I'll address depending on the applicant's response.
And then we have Sergeant Warren and the audience too.
Evening, everyone. Tanner Hansaker. In response to what Art is suggesting or mentioning, so the thought is for additional signage or some sort of a sign that informs anyone who's exiting the property to be aware or slow in the event that there's a pedestrian on the sidewalk. Is that what I'm understanding? Okay, sounds great. I suppose something like that could be put in place, or we could just simply make sure that we vocalize that to any potential renter, that they should always be watching that. I suggest that to everybody who leaves our yard, because there can be and have been a lot of
with either scooters or bicycles or something to that effect. So it's always constant, always watching. With regard to crosswalk, there is, it's not visible at that image, but there is one that goes straight across to what maybe hopefully one day could be more broad parking, right there across the school and so it may be a little difficult to see. There's that one on the south end that is for Keno, and there's a second that's more. There, that's so there, we do have 2 crosswalks.
Address the basic requirements of entering a public street from a private property.
I actually have some other questions for him as well, but before we do that, how about Justin, do you have any questions for Tanner?
No, at this point, I think I'd like to hear a little more
Very good.
about what we're talking about.
Good evening. Sergeant Warren, Glow Police Department. As for your question about exiting the private drive onto the sidewalk, there is a state statute that does require drivers exiting a private property must, even if there's not a stop sign, they must stop as if there is a stop sign before entering any public roadway. So there is already state statute reference that for drivers to obey. So anytime you exit any private property, driveway, alleyway, anything like that, before you go onto a public roadway, you must stop as if it's a stop sign. Failure to do so is a civil violation.
Okay, I actually have a couple more questions for you, if I could,
Yes.
since you're here. I have serious concerns with how we're talking about enforcing the noise limits. I mean, I understand that we've already got ordinances, and so that's fine. That should be enough to me. People aren't spending this kind of money to sit in the parking lot and rev engines and blow, their stereo speakers out. So that one I think is kind of ridiculous. But how are we going to enforce the noise, the high noise levels that they're saying it, and how are you going to enforce who rented from Tanner and who is just someone else on a side-by-side or a Harley or anything else blasting their stereo, even in the middle of the daytime? I sit on Broad Street all day long and listen to my windows rattling, and we joked all weekend, damn Tanner and his rentals, because we all thought it was ridiculous. They're going to try to, how are you going to say that Tanner can't do it, but everyone else that lives in the neighborhoods can blast away all they want?
So there, like you said, there are city codes reference sound systems. I know a few of us have been trying our best to negate that, and you're very correct. There's many times, even off duty, you could sit there. I recently made a stop this last week and referenced a gentleman probably about 6, 7 o'clock in the evening on a side by side blasting his radio. So it's got to be officers need to witness it and make those stops. This is things that we could contact our guys and reiterate the city code and enforcement actions on that. What helps out in situations like that is enforcement. It's kind of a double-edged sword. We enforce it and issue citations for it, and it makes the general public mad, or we don't, and it makes everybody else who's annoyed by it mad. So from my experience of 17 years of doing this job, enforcement is what changes behavior. And under if it's a rental or their own, whoever's in control of that ATV, UTV at that time is responsible for the violation. So it's no different than a driver of a vehicle. You may be driving your mother's vehicle and there's a violation on registration or something. You, as the operator of that vehicle, are responsible for everything on that vehicle. So same thing with ATVs and UTVs. If there's loud exhaust blasting music, the operator of that ATV, UTV is the violator.
Okay, so then I guess my question is why are we adding an extra layer on for Tanner for doing a rental? If the police are going to pull anyone over that's blaring the music in the neighborhoods or driving around, then why does his condition have to have like an extra layer of like he has to be more careful than my neighbor does that blows his speaker out all the time?
Yes, thank you so much, Madam Chair and Commissioners. So if it's included as a condition of approval, and one renter gets a ticket for noise, goes away, another renter gets a ticket for noise, goes away. If it's with that condition of approval, if it's identified that these are attributed to that business, we can then enforce the conditions of the use permit with the owner of the property. So, right, anybody can, operate their own personal vehicle and everything. This is unique in certain circumstances, as it's a recreational vehicle rental scenario in the downtown, and this would just give you more teeth to say, no, we understand you've ticketed 5 people this year coming out of that, renting those units. It's becoming a nuisance, apparently. We're getting complaints. Beyond just issuing citations, we have other mechanisms in place to be able to address that with that rental owner. So that's the big picture of why we would have that additional teeth. It puts the onus, it shares the onus with the business operator, as well as the, not that they're obviously getting a ticket, but like I said, through that process, it's extended to have a responsibility or put that onus on, as a responsibility on the owner. There's more to get, because, right, we can't, once that's out, well, yeah, we do that, and it's not an uncommon thing for a situation to occur, and noise or whatever might occur. If you don't have any condition there, you can't go back after the business owner. That might be the impetus of a heightened level or something like that. Now, we all understand Tanner's a great guy and runs great businesses in the community. We don't expect that. But again, these are for the margins. Conditions of approval will be for the margins, those that might have a reoccurring problems. And also in a situation where, well, anyway, I can go on, but obviously it's up to the commission. You know, I will quickly touch on, and not to shift gears unless you want to keep talking about that. That sign item, that was a good point to have additional notification if there's a public sidewalk given in our downtown, in our pedestrian-oriented downtown. So in response to Art's, Commissioner Warren's comment there, that providing additional on-site signage on-site east of the public sidewalk to notify UTV customers of pedestrian crossing probably would be appropriate.
Now, I want one on Bailey Street and on the alley, on the next side.
There's very few. So in the urban downtown, in this situation, especially historic, it's mostly a face of wall. And there's very few intersections aside from the streets. So most of these auto-oriented businesses have been there for 50 years or longer, and they will be there for a long time to come. They tend to not change. It's not the most customary use in an urban walkable downtown shopping area, pedestrian district like our downtown to some extent. So anyway, that just reinforces, and as future requests come in, that could be. But yeah, you certainly, again, this is up to the planning commission. I recognize I'll offer some language should you wish to have that criteria. Keep in mind, the signs aren't expensive necessarily to Mr. Hunsack or foreign, I should say expensive.
So, before we open it for public hearing, I do have one additional question, coming for Dana. Do we have any regulations when it comes to like having vehicles parked out on the streets currently within like our downtown core or anything along those lines? So I know we're saying it could be parked along the line, but I know we can always sell businesses and things can be advertised in different ways.
Not beyond our typical on-street parking and our public parking areas. We know we purge, I don't know what extent we enforce employees to park in other locations rather than the on-street parking spaces, but that's been a topic. And we know also that on occasion, in certain situations, certain properties do complain about the available on-street parking because employees of another business might be parking in their spaces and leaving cars for extended periods and things like that. So we know it has the propensity for an issue, and we'd like to try and mitigate that as much as possible in like these situations.
So I think that brings up a good point. That's actually why I was bringing it up, because of just our restriction on how much parking we have in downtown. If we might add a stipulation on this that the UTVs would be advertised only on that side as that site plan proposes, because I think that continues to free up more of that parking that we're really struggling with in downtown on busy days.
So the display location is off-site, is on his property, private property, perfect, that's where we want it.
Yeah, I'm just talking about, because I know if it was me, I'd also probably try to put them out on the street side.
Oh.
And I don't know if that becomes a vendor thing at that point, or
Oh, well, that would be an issue. He's shown, this is the site plan we received, so we would,
Yep.
use permit would be specific to this site plan.
Okay.
This would be the parking location for those. If
Perfect.
you repeated, hey, they're parking them out in the city street or whatever, you know, again, this is attached to the CUP. Contacted, please, locate your vehicles as approved by the planning commission.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much. I think that's all the questions I have for now.
Ready? That's it. Let's open the public hearing. Do you want to speak on this subject? Pardon?
Thank you. My name is Carmen Casillas. My sister and I own the property at 208 East Apache Street, just right above the hill. And I, you know, with the signage, I think it's a great idea what Tanner's doing, because the Stairzona, so many people have come in from out of town, tourists that are walking that trail. Unfortunately, it's closed right now, but I think his business will bring in more tourism for our area. And I have 100% faith in what he's supposed to do and that he will follow all the rules and regulations. As far as the noise, I have neighbors that have side-by-sides and go up and down the neighborhood all the time, and I love it because I love side-by-side. But I just, what I wanted to speak on was the signage. Earth Mover Tires is right next to him, side-by-side with him, and many times I've had to slow down because people are coming out of there after getting their vehicles fixed, or they have big buses right there that sometimes block the area. So my thing would be, why is it Tanner has to and Earth Mover doesn't have to? And so what's good for one is good for the other. And I just, in my opinion, what I'm hearing, what I'm understanding is that there are more rules and regs being put on Tanner's business than there are anywhere else. And so that's my issue. And as far as the parking, I would believe that as soon as the Silver King building is knocked down, that area is going to open up. I believe it belongs to the city, and that should be perfect parking for anyone. It's off the road, and that would be a perfect place. I'm always watching, so those vehicles would be safe. So I support what Tanner's doing, and I hope the commission agrees with me and looks at that, because we do need this business here due to the tourism and everything that's going on here in Globe. Thank you.
Anyone else? Do you have any email or anything on that one?
I don't see.
Okay, with that, then I'm going to close the hearing. So unless we have anything further to discuss, we do a motion.
Madam Chairman, I make a motion that we approve UP 2403, a request for a conditional use permit to allow the outdoor rental of utility terrain vehicles, UTVs, as an accessory commercial use on lots in the C3 Central Commercial Zoning District with a preservation, with a historical preservation, overlay of the property located at 461 and 465 North Broadway Street, accessory parcels number 208-203-008-009.
Second?
Could we modify that motion to also include the additional stipulations outlined 1 through 4? Or I can make another motion.
I'm sorry, I apologize, first time I've done this. So, with the conditions, listed, plus the one that was added, there were 3 conditions, plus we added number 4.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone against, say nay. The ayes have it. Can I remove new business? Okay, moving on to item C. Public hearing and consideration case number U2-2402. Request a conditional permit to allow commercial use to convert five dwellings on a single lot in the 16th Central Commercial Zone District, a property located at 637 West Mass Street, assessor card number 208-03-7.
Excellent, thank you so much, Madam Chair. Commissioners, this parcel is located right here in the C3 zoning district. This would be the parcel we're discussing. I believe this structure in the rear, and I'm gonna go ahead, so that's all C3, it's outside of the historic district and fronting Ash Street there. You can see across the street, or some of the uses of the Pinal Creek wash comes right along one side of it. This would be the communication tower. I think T-Mobile has a communication tower located right here in a gated facility, and these are like mini storage boxes containing equipment to support.
Dana, we're only seeing you, we're not seeing you.
Oh gosh, I apologize.
Not that we don't like looking at you, we're not learning.
But no, thanks. You will. All right, so this would be the parcel. Okay, let's back up, I apologize again. That's the parcel in question. So there's one commercial building on the frontage that's not proposed for conversion. It would continue to be a retail building as it's existed. It's probably from early 1900s, based on its adjacency to the street and the history on this parcel. I think something was developed in the early 1920s, likely that. This building in the rear, these two buildings were built one in the 60s and one even later than that. I believe this structure was developed specifically for an apartment building. Now, our zoning code, as you know, in the C3 district allows for conditional use permits to allow residential use. Otherwise, residential uses are not allowed unless it's customary, like a manager's quarters for a building type of use that customarily has manager's quarters, such as a mini storage or something like that. So anyway, or a hotel use. And then the front, I think, has been historically used as a commercial front office, maybe retail front there. So anyway, what I was getting at was in the rear here, so we have Pinal Creek coming through, flanking one side of the property on the south, and then the T-Mobile telco tower in downtown right here in a full enclosure across an alley that is a public alley that doesn't go through, but the right-of-way shows that it does go through. So that particular parcel is pretty secure. These structures you see on it are just equipment housings for the various cell tower equipment. And there you see it better. And then retail over here in the corner. So the applicant's proposing to keep this building commercial. It happens to be in the floodplain. But these two buildings are not. Again, this, I believe, was purpose-built as a residence for like 3 residences, and they are proposing to modify this front building to allow for 2 apartments. Some work has been done on those properties. I will bring up the site plan now. And as I mentioned, we do allow residences in commercial with an approved conditional use permit. And what we look at when we're considering that is, okay, how conducive is this location for residents. You know, is this a place that a family could be safe and not have, you know, considerable nuisances and things like that impact them, and then just basically be a degradation of a residential complex, undesirable or something like that. So we want to make sure things are done and it's in a location that is palatable for residential use. So clearly this back building has been utilized that way, and it appears that has been a palatable use. So we're mostly looking at this front building, though it'll apply to all residential on this CUP, would apply to all residential on the property. The applicant has redesigned that parking area, organized it, showing specifically these parking spaces, identifying a handicap space, a handicap ramp, same with in providing access to the existing commercial building, and then the adequate number of parking spaces needed for the 10 dwellings, and then the one, it's a salon, very small commercial building here that will remain. They are removing asphalt and replacing it with landscaping. You have a condition of approval that will approve a landscape plan that meets, you know, the good screening requirements. Also, they're proposing a 3-foot wall and then bumps up outside of that front setback to a 6-foot fence to provide adequate security, as well as a gate is shown here to close that during off hours and probably be operable by remote to the residents of the property and the commercial property owners. So that would be a secured site. Just looking at the redesign or redevelopment of the site and reintroducing the landscape permeable surfaces on the property, I think would be conducive for a residential housing area in this stretch. And then quick access, obviously, to the wash and sidewalks to commercial across the street with crossings, unlike what we saw in the Motel 6 scenario, where it would be more than a quarter-mile walk or a distant crossing to get to commercial goods and services. We have some adequate access right here, if not coming over and going towards our downtown. So it would effectively allow for residents to be closer to downtown, which we want. We want that greater utility and access to our downtown by residents and guests as well. So with that, given the plan that the applicants provided to reintroduce that landscaping and provide some barrier, some screen walls and enclosure, we believe this would be a good location for the residents. So staff is recommending approval. Staff has not received any comment from the public in our notifications. And recommending approval that the landscape plan for landscape areas shall be approved with the following conditions. Landscaping be approved by the City of Globe Zoning Administrator prior to installation and certificate of occupancy for any new dwelling. So we want that landscape in and maturing prior to people moving in for the people. In the event any building is proposed to change back to a commercial use, said change shall require an amendment to this conditional use permit. So we want to make sure that things are going back and forth. We're aware of what it is and that it's not going to jeopardize the quality of a residential development that's been shown here. Thirdly, no structure on the subject property that is damaged by fire or cause. So that's a standard condition that we include. A lot of our properties are legal non-conforming or don't meet the minimum setbacks. We just like to reiterate that we do have a code that requires if it's substantially, if certain things occur on the property that it would be damaging the structure and making it uninhabitable, would need to be brought back up to code and constructed to our current code. And then fourth, all building permits necessary for converting the subject structure to a residence are required and shall comply with applicable building, fire, and other city codes and policies. Fire and building have reviewed these plans. And then finally, addressing is required on buildings that's a standard requirement from our fire department. That's it. So staff is recommending approval. And again, this is a conditional use permit, public hearing, so you'll open up a public hearing after discussion, see if there's anybody from the public that would like to provide comment. Be happy to respond to any questions.
Justin, Art, do you have any questions before we open the public hearing?
Chairman, I do have a question for Dana, and it relates to the gate at the front of the property. I have a little bit of a concern with traffic buildup with having gates located on any type of facility like this, particularly on a highway property. With I know we have a speed limit in place that is typically not followed, especially in the evening hours, and twilight, and commercial time. There's people going a little faster than they should be, which raises a little bit of concern for me with having a gate that close to the right of way.
Very good. Great point and comment.
Is there precedence for allowing new proposed gates like this with conditional use permits within the town of Globe, or would this be setting a new precedence we wouldn't want to necessarily set?
We have gates and fences behind sidewalk in certain scenarios, so I definitely think there would be a precedent, a new precedent, but all those others might be older, prior to current code. It is restricted to 3 feet, which doesn't allow a car to still get over it. Well, I would say the city does not have a code like many other communities do, and particularly in the valley, of vehicle turnarounds at the entrance. I did look at the fact that we do have about a 22-foot distance from back of curb, back of curb to that gate entrance. That's approximately 20 feet right there, which is single parking space. So at least they can get out of the right of way. Ideally, obviously, I do think it's close enough to the right of way to have it visible. We could include a condition that there is some, depending on where we'd like to go with that, we could include the requirement for reflective devices on that gate, so it's very clear that it's there. Because I could also see if it was dark, the black wrought iron gate of sorts, it could be driven right into.
That was going to be my second portion there.
So I'm open, and the applicant, I believe, is in the audience and might be able to also respond to that.
Would the applicant like to respond? Sorry, I can't see this thing on the camera.
Hi, I'm Ronaldo Rodriguez. Me and my father, we heard you guys saying about the gate, and yeah, we'd like to make sure that the gate is very visible, make sure that everybody, even in the traffic, is also, aware of people into the apartment. I am also going to be living there, so, I also want to see, as much safety as possible. I have a niece that's also living there. I want to make sure they're safe as well. And, if you guys need us to do anything, make sure, we just want to make sure everything goes smoothly. If that means the gate has to be pushed back or anything like that, you just want to make sure everything is.
Is the gate going to be electronic, or something you have to get out actually?
We'd like it to be electronic. Yeah, it'd be a lot simpler, a lot easier. Yeah, it'd be a lot easier, like a garage door. Yeah, so, I feel like the safer we can make it, if it has to be electric, that'd be a lot better, like a garage door. In, up, down, easy. And, if we have to put reflectors on it, make it a little bit more safe, we will. We're just here to take some opinions, make sure you guys are all happy, make sure we, can proceed through this.
Thank you. I think that's great. Honestly, I think I would be comfortable if we set a stipulation that gate could be no closer than 22 feet to back of curb. I think a simple stipulation like that just gives just enough room for one car to sit off to the side. Safety is my only real concern here. I know there's going to be chances that there might be a gate that breaks at some point, so I don't feel like I need to stipulate you must always have a remote opening gate, because I think things could change. I'd rather just make sure we have that safety piece in play, because I think this is a great idea. More housing can get Globe. I think this is wonderful.
Back to the gate, is that a, Madam Chairman, is that a sliding gate or?
Racing Gate, we haven't gotten that far yet, but whichever you guys would like, we would, put in. We just want to be able to see with it. So, you sliding gate, I feel like would be a lot easier.
That would be my theory, but that's your business.
Yeah, sliding gate would be a lot easier.
I think if we're approving this site plan as a conditional use permit, correct, they would need to do a sliding gate from what we have shown.
Exactly, and I don't know if a swing gate would start to compromise parking spaces. That's the scenario, so I think a sliding gate's the only feasible option.
Do we have any more questions or comments before we open the public hearing?
Anyone here have something they'd like to say?
Thank you. I just want to know, since with this increased traffic that's going to come onto the highway and the street right there, is this going to require a street light or a stoplight?
But I don't know if I could clarify, who's asking that question? Is that a member of the public?
Yes, member of the public.
There you go.
Rick Dubois.
Sorry, go ahead. To respond to whether or not a street light would be required here, no, it would not dictate the amount of traffic generated for a street light. If that property was utilized as it's been utilized previously as a retail use, it would have a much higher traffic volume. So it converting to residential should be a much less traffic volume or demand in and out of the right of way at that location.
Okay, that's all I want.
All right, thank you. Does anyone else have any public comment? Do we have any emails, texts, or anything? No emails. All right, do we have anyone else for close public hearing? Do I have a motion, or do we have any further comments?
I have one additional question, Chairman, for Dana. Do we have any requirements of multifamily housing for having any community amenities? I'm not aware of any, but I figured I'd check.
Correct, we do not.
Okay.
Well, obviously we want to make sure there's grass, and I took that into consideration with staff when we reviewed this. So just to explain to you our perspective, and given that, grass, great. That's going to soften up places to play, secure. Kids can't just run out into the street in that scenario, so that's good. I originally, when I followed up with the applicant, I thought, all of us could get rid of all that unnecessary pavement, and thought this area would be great too, as turf. And then I just thought about it more and thought, that would actually probably provide more of an interactive space for families if they're grilling or doing something like that, to be away from the street and back here. Kids are, I've got a paper driveway, and I realized my kids never really got to roller skate or skateboard or those things. So I see the value in having that concrete slab. So there's, I thought, it was a good design by this architect to say, we'll preserve a certain area. Maybe they place picnic tables or something like that. But obviously, you can't drive a car there, right? It'll be curved. So it won't become this added weird area that people tend to just store stuff or something like that, ideally. We do have a conditional use permit where we would require for outdoor storage or something like that to be stored appropriately. So that's my take on it.
I completely agree. I kept looking at it, I kept thinking maybe it'd be great to have like a barbecue out there, picnic tables, shades, just something additional amenity-wise, but since we don't currently have that stipulated in our zoning code.
We don't have specific amenity requirements for
okay.
multifamily.
again, I think this is a great project. I love it. It's fully enclosed, makes it a lot safer for kids. Love the fact that got landscape space. Very supportive of this project.
No, I think I'm good.
You do, I think that sounds wonderful. I hope you have a great lunch. Thank you. So with that, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve case UP-24-02 with the outlined 6 stipulations as are up on the screen currently.
Second.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any
Opposed,
opposed,
say
say nay.
nay.
Ayes
Ayes
have
have
it.
it. All right, with that, you have, let me just,
Madam Chair, Commissioners, nothing is pending currently for your agenda. So knock on wood, you might have a quiet, I'm sure it's a matter of time for something to come out for us, but nothing pending, so enjoy maybe the next month off.
Shelley, anything? Paul, okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second.
You're adjourned. Thank you.